Soul Streaming Entry 21. The Villain on the Yellow Brick Road. No matter how long I've been on this soul-led journey of mine, I still find myself surprised when plans change. Surprised when I end up somewhere I wasn't expecting to be. Because if I'm honest, I thought I would be somewhere else by now. Hell, in a different country for sure. In a different environment. Moving in a different damn way. But instead, I'm still here in America, but now in Philly. And not by force or obligation, but because something in me felt called. My mom needed me during her recovery after surgery, and I didn't question it. I just showed up. So now I find myself in a space I didn't plan for, in a role I didn't map out, living a version of me that at one point I might have misunderstood. Because there are past versions of me that would have looked at this moment and called it a detour. Shit, maybe even a delay, a moment where things didn't go according to plan. But I'm not that version of me anymore. Because the truth is, I'm somewhere I didn't plan to be for reasons I don't regret. And that changes everything. I could have made myself the villain in this story. I could have looked at my life and said I fell off track and went the fuck backwards, that I should be somewhere else by now, that things aren't unfolding the way I imagined. But as I sit here, in the middle of tears I can't even fully name, but feel so good to release, I don't feel off track. I feel in it, and so grateful I get to be in such strong connection with my feelings. The tears came without a clear reason. Not one moment, not one thought, just a quiet release. And the only way I can describe them is layered, like a gumbo of emotions I'm not even trying to separate anymore. Some of it feels like letting go of expectations I didn't realize I was still holding. Some of it feels like grieving a timeline I thought I'd be living by now. Some of it is the weight of showing up for someone I love, not out of obligation, but because I can feel how much I'm needed right now. Sometimes that looks like helping my mom into the shower, giving her her meds, being present in ways that don't always require doing, just being there, sitting in the room while she rests, holding space for her during a vulnerable transition because she asked me to stay close. Not because I have to, but because I can feel the difference it makes for her. And in those moments, I understand something deeper. This isn't a pause in my life. This is my life right now. And I'm choosing to meet it. Some of it is the quiet realization that my life doesn't move in predictable ways anymore. Let's be real, it hasn't for a while. And I often ask myself, if I'm the creator, what does it mean to create a life that doesn't follow my plans? Because this feeling, this layered release, is not random. I've learned to pay attention to my cycles. And every time I relocate, I feel it. The realness of it all settling in, the shift in my environment, the change in my routine, the way my day to day begins to reshape itself around where I am and who I'm being in that space. And what I've come to realize is no matter where I go, I'm the only constant. Even in places I've been before, I'm not the same when I return. Something in me has shifted, expanded, released, integrated. So even familiarity feels new because I am. And maybe that's why moments like this hit the way they do. Not that anything is wrong, but because something is recalibrating. As much as I can feel the weight of what I'm holding right now, I can also feel something else rising alongside it. A quiet excitement, wondering, who am I in this moment? Who am I becoming through this? And that question alone has been shifting something in me. Because while I sat here, letting these layered tears fall without trying to make sense of them, I realized how easy it would be to make myself the villain in my own story right now. By tying my growth to distance, to change, to somewhere else, instead of honoring that my evolution isn't waiting on a new environment. It's happening wherever I am willing to meet myself. But just as easily, I started thinking about the times I may have been the villain in someone else's story. Not because I intended harm, not because I was moving with ill intent, but because I chose myself, because I changed, because I no longer fit the version of me that someone else was comfortable with. And it made me pause, because perspective really is everything. The villain and the role I play. Society has a very specific way of defining a villain. The villain is the one who hurts people, the one who disrupts peace, the one who causes endings, chaos, discomfort, the one people point to when something doesn't feel good and say, they're the problem. And depending on who you ask, I've been that. I've been the one who left, the one who didn't stay to make people comfortable, the one who said the thing that made everything shift, the one who saw right through their mask. So, yeah, I understand how I can be seen that way because my light disrupts people's demons. But what people don't always understand is what actually happened while I was there. I don't enter people's lives just to exist in them. I have a way of getting people to see themselves, to ask themselves questions they weren't asking before, to open up to what could be, even if they didn't know that's what was happening. And I don't force it. It just happens. I like to call what I give people my gifts, not because I think I'm better than anyone, but because of how I see them. Because when I'm giving to someone, what I'm really saying is, I see you. You're perfectly you. You have it in you already. I'm sorry for the experience you went through, but let me help you see what you gained from it. I understand you. Let me guide you in the right direction. You're going to be okay. It's like magical fairy dust. But for me, it's unicorn dust. Just a little bit of magic to remind people of who they already are. You see, I love seeing how I can soften people's walls on my yellow brick road. How they can go from seeing life in black and white to slowly remembering what color feels like. And I do it with grace, compassion, patience, and genuine care because I don't take that kind of responsibility lightly. Watching people walk alongside me for a moment, feeling that spark, that curiosity, that shift, while knowing that something in them has already begun to open. But where people get it twisted is when it's time for me to go, because I don't stay past the point where the path is yours to walk. I may have let you walk beside me on my yellow brick road, but I was never meant to walk it for you. And me stepping away is what creates the space for you to find your own path and eventually your own yellow brick road. And when I leave, it can feel abrupt. It can feel confusing. It can feel like rejection. So sometimes I become the villain in that moment because it's easier to say, she left me, than to sit with, now it's my turn. But what if it was never abandonment? What if it was the moment where the path opened up for you, where you get to walk it at your own pace, take your own routes, make your own choices without leaning on me to show you how? Because I was never doing it for you. You were doing it the entire time. I may have been helping, I may have been guiding, I may have been reflecting things back to you, but you had to choose it. You still have to choose it every single time. And that's why not everyone gets to experience me. Because if the energy is misaligned, if it's rooted in envy or taking or trying to swap destinies, if it's coming from unhealed places that want to use instead of receive, then it won't land the way it's meant to, or it will be taken advantage of. And that's when the cord gets cut. Not out of punishment, but out of alignment. Because my presence is not meant to be consumed. It's meant to be received, integrated, and then continued. So if you ever felt like I was the villain in your story, shit, I get it. But if you're willing to look at it differently, ask yourself, what did she show me? What did she say that stayed with me? What did I feel when I was around her? And how can I continue that without her? Because that's where the story actually changes. And moments like this don't just ask you to reflect, they ask you to choose. To choose whether you're going to receive it from the part of you that resists or the part of you that's ready to grow. Because both exist. The villain within. What's been more important for me to recognize is how I've been the villain in my own life, not through destruction, but through disservice. Through the moments where I start questioning what I already know, where I lean too far into fear or hope or uncertainty, and forget that I am the one creating this experience in the first place. Because everything exists on a spectrum. A little fear can sharpen you, a little questioning can ground you. Even hope has its place. But when I sit in those energies too long, I start acting like I'm waiting on life to decide for me. And that's when I abandon myself. That's when I become the villain in my own story. Not because I'm doing anything wrong, but because I'm forgetting who I am. Forgetting that if I say I believe in being paid to exist by being myself, then I have to live like that's already true, regardless of the evidence, regardless of the timeline, regardless of whether I can fully see how it's all going to come together. Because the version of me that's here right now doesn't even know what the next version of me will ask for. So, how could I possibly try to control the outcome? All I can do is trust that where I'm being led is either exactly what I want or something even better than I could have imagined for myself. And when tension shows up, because that's what it feels like to me, worry, stress, overthinking, it all feels like tension. I sit with it, I face it, I ask myself directly, what are you afraid of? What do you think is going to go wrong? And then I listen. No judgment, no rushing to fix it, just listen. And once I hear it, I respond to myself with the same honesty. I hear you. Thank you for being real with me. But you can do this. You don't have to know how it's all going to work out. You just have to trust that it is. Even if it feels like everything feels out of your control. Even if it feels like you're being stretched in ways you didn't expect. What if this is the path? What if all of this is leading you directly to something you don't have to force, earn, or prove yourself worthy of? So the real question becomes, what are you willing to work for? A life that constantly pulls you away from yourself, or a life where all of that effort is poured back into you? And for me, this is what coming into union with myself looks like. Not silencing the part of me that doubts, not pretending those thoughts don't exist, but allowing them to speak, letting them say everything they think could go wrong, everything they're afraid of, everything they don't trust yet, because they're just thoughts, just movement. And when I can hear them without becoming them, that's how I keep my inner villain from running the story. The split. I've come to understand something about the villain storyline. There's a split in how people relate to it. Some people continue to perpetuate it, not always consciously, but in a way that serves them, so they think. Because if they feel wounded, if something didn't go the way they expected, if something shifted that they weren't ready for, then holding on to that narrative gives them somewhere to place it, somewhere to point, somewhere to say, this is why I feel the way I feel. And sometimes that turns into wanting someone else to carry that weight too. But then there are people who take that same narrative and do something different with it. They don't deny what they felt. They don't pretend it didn't affect them. But they don't stay there either. They take it, they sit with it, and then they rewrite it for themselves. But just because that path is available doesn't mean it's easy to walk, because it requires something most people aren't used to giving themselves: trust. Trust why things don't make sense. Trust why things are shifting. Trust why you're in the highs, the lows, and everything in between. It requires you to hold a vision in your mind without constantly letting your current reality talk you out of it. And that's where it gets tricky. Because depending on your lens, depending on what you've experienced, depending on what you've been conditioned to believe, you might say you believe something is possible, but still move like it's not. And that internal conflict, that's what people don't always realize they're operating from. And this is where the split happened for me. Not from where I am right now, but from what I've already lived through. From the moment I decided to really start living, like actually rewriting the parts of me that were tied to how the villain was showing up in my own life. And I didn't do that all at once. I started small. It was like, all right, I see what's going on. What can I tweak? And every decision after that came from that place. Not perfect, not fearless, often scared. Scared as fuck, actually. At first, it would just hit me like, ooh, I'm scared. And I paused. Then it turned to, all right, I'm nervous. Then from nervous, it became, okay, well, shit, why not? Why the fuck not? And then from there, it shifted into, okay, I really can have this. I believe I can have this. And then from that, it became, it's mine. I'm claiming it. Because if you still want it after the fear, after the doubt, after the back and forth, then why wouldn't it be yours? And I've been in the in between too. I'm not outside of that. I'm in it with everybody else. That's how I know. Because I didn't jump from fear to certainty overnight. I built it little by little, taking small steps at a time. That's it. Just what can I tweak right now? What's one thing I can trust myself with? And then something happens. It's like once you really decide, it's like something turns on inside of you. Like you got a whole bunch of bulbs in you, and one by one, they just start lighting up. Not because anything outside changed first, but because you chose something different internally. You made it the dominant thought, the dominant belief, with dominant trust. And once you believe it, it just is. And from there, everything else starts aligning to that. The way you see things changes. The way you move changes. The way you respond changes. And you don't even have to force it. It just becomes how you are. So now when I ask myself questions, it's like, it's not coming from confusion. It's coming from awareness. Like, okay, I see you. I see where I am. I see what's showing up. What do I want to choose from here? Because there's always going to be a lot going on, a lot to look at, a lot to react to. But what am I choosing? That's what matters. And that's something I've been able to live out in real ways. Even with me relocating, it's not just about picking up and going somewhere, it's how I move through it, how I can hold a vision and still allow myself to shift, adjust, show up where I need to without guilt, without feeling like I'm off track. Because I'm not. I'm exactly where I need to be. That's still alignment. That's still me choosing myself because I already saw it. I already set the intention. I already felt it. So now I get to just be in it, move through it, and trust that everything is still unfolding the way it's supposed to. because it always is. And that's when it clicked even deeper for me. Everybody in your life, they're characters in your reality. And I don't mean that in a dismissive way. I mean that in a powerful way because you are assigning meaning. You're assigning roles. You're deciding what something means for you. And what you need from a moment is not always going to feel good. Sometimes it's going to be beautiful. Sometimes it's going to be light. And sometimes it's going to hit low, real low, uncomfortable, in your face. And that doesn't mean something is wrong. That just means that's what was required for you to see what you needed to see. Because everything that shows up is still happening through your lens, in your world. I don't mind being the villain because you need you. And I don't mind being the villain in people's stories. I really don't. Because if I could give anybody anything, it would be themselves. It would be for them to see themselves, to trust themselves, to show up for themselves. Because those are the gifts that you can't measure, that you can't replace, that you can't find in anything outside of you. And I'm just keeping it real. That's the real sauce. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing I feel like I need to gatekeep from people in that way because everything I've tapped into, everything I've opened up within myself, every way I've expanded my mind, my awareness, my senses, that's available to everybody. Everybody. It's not that it's hidden. It's just that not everybody is practicing. Not everybody knows where to start. And I've come to understand that's a part of my role. I get it started. I'll open the door. I'll shift the perspective. I'll remind you of what's possible. And then I hand it back to you because it was always yours. Every time I've stepped away from someone, every time something ended, every time we separated, it wasn't just me deciding that, even if it looked like that, even if it felt one sided, even if they didn't have the words for it. It was mutual, it was time. Not in a way where we sat down and said it out loud, but in a deeper way. Energetically, spiritually, we've both reached a point where something had completed. And I honored that, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it was misunderstood, even when it made me look like the villain. Because what looks like me removing myself is really me allowing the story to shift, not just for me, but for them too. Because as long as I stay past that point, we're not growing. We're holding each other in a version that's already expired. And I don't want that for me. And I don't want that for you either. So even if it felt like I left, even if it felt like you didn't get a choice, you did. We both did. Because something in you knew too. Something in you was ready, ready to walk your path at your pace, in your way, without me being the reference point. Because at some point, you need you and I need me. And that doesn't make either of us wrong. It doesn't make either of us the villain. It just means we answered the call to come back home to ourselves. So, yeah, when those moments happen, when things shift, when separation happens, when energy changes, I've seen how many different frequencies of thought can come up for people. Not fact, just frequencies. Rejection, abandonment, envy, jealousy, disrespect, not being enough, being replaced, being overlooked, being manipulated, being controlled, something being done to you, even going as far as thinking it's spell work or something deeper at play. And I don't take that personally because to me, that's information. That's someone choosing their lens in that moment. That's someone showing me what they're receptive to, what they're available to believe, what frequency they're operating in. And it tells me everything I need to know, not in a judgmental way, just in a clear way. Like, okay, I see where you are right now. And I've been there too. I've seen how I've shown up in myself in similar ways, how I've created stories, how I've made things mean something they didn't have to mean. That's what I recognize as my own villain behavior. Because what you try to assign to someone else, you're also doing to yourself every time. Because we're all creating, we're all assigning roles, we're all deciding what something means in our reality. So if I create you as a character in my experience and I decide you're doing something to me, that's still my creation, just like everything else I've created. And it's not always the same. Sometimes it flows, feels aligned, easy, like everything is just working. Other times it gets rocky, things shift, fall out of place. And then there are moments where it's just the end of the road. And that's simple. Not always easy, but simple. It just means you're not ready to face yourself in that way yet. And I can understand that. But for me, in order to keep raising my level of consciousness, in order to stay true to who I am, what I need, and how I choose to create, I have to honor what I see. Because this whole thing, this life, this experience, it's like making a dish. You already know what ingredients you need. You already know what you said you wanted. And if you leave things out or substitute something that doesn't belong, you're going to get a different result, a different taste, a different experience. And that doesn't make it wrong. It just makes it different. But if you actually follow through, if you stay aligned with what you said you wanted, if you trust what you're creating, you get the vision or something even better. And then there are moments where you're just improvising and it doesn't come out how you thought it would. Hell, sometimes you can't even eat what you made. But even that leads you somewhere to try something new, to experience something different, to realize what you actually wanted all along. So for me, I can be grateful for all of it. Every version, every outcome, even the ones that didn't land the way I expected, because it's all a part of what I created and what I'm continuing to create. My legacy thread. If you are reading this, it's because you're meant to. And I trust that. I trust my work. I trust my downloads. I trust my recoding because that's what I'm doing every time I speak, every time I share. I'm recoding. That's my intention. And my intentions run deep. Even for people I don't know, even for people I may never meet, because there's nothing that fulfills me more than seeing people find their way back to something within themselves, a solution, a new door, a new way of being, a new way of seeing themselves, in a way that actually honors them, in a way that pours into them. That's a blessing to me. So if anything I've said resonates with you, use it, make it your own, rework it in a way that actually fits you. Rewrite the meanings you've been given. Because a lot of what we carry is just inherited language, inherited meaning, inherited emotion attached to words that were never meant to limit you. So, what if you chose differently? What if you redefined it? Separation as return, endings as alignment, contracts closing as completion, fear as a doorway inward, a doorway to see yourself, a doorway to rewrite your narrative, because that's all it really is, a shift in meaning. And once you take away that negative undercurrent, once you stop defaulting to what you were taught to feel, you get to make it work for you. You get to decide what something means. And from there, you get to create from that place. A whisper for you. It's okay to be the villain in someone else's story. Not out of malice, but because your truth disrupted something they weren't ready to face. Sometimes that's what change looks like. And it's okay to be the villain in your own story too. When you finally see where you've been doubting yourself, where you've been ignoring what you know, where you've been holding yourself back, that awareness isn't punishment, it's power. Because once you see it, you can change it. So don't get caught up in the label villain, hero, whatever story is being told. Ask yourself instead, am I being honest with myself? Am I honoring what I know? Am I choosing in a way that moves me forward? Because that's what actually matters. And sometimes being the villain is just a role that creates the shift. Here are your journal prompts for this week's entry. Number one, where in my life have I been labeled as the villain? And what truth was I actually honoring in that moment? Number two, in what ways have I made myself the villain in my own story by ignoring what I already know or feel? Number three, what is something in my life right now that feels like an ending? And how might it actually be in alignment? Number four, what meaning have I inherited around words like rejection, separation, or fear? And how can I redefine them in a way that supports me? Number five, if I fully trusted that I am the creator of my experience, what would I choose differently right now? Thank you for witnessing this soul stream. Return to it whenever you need to come home to yourself. Until next time, stay soft, stay true, and keep streaming your soul your way. Love, Sim.